Hello and welcome to a brand new Nitro RX podcast episode. I am one of your hosts, Nabila Tejpar, and I am joined by my trusty co-host, Thiemo Albers Daily. How are you doing? It's been a little while, hasn't it?
It has been a little while, but I am pretty good, thank you. We've both been off kind of traveling around a bit, so we are a little bit late to this one, but at the same time, there's a massive gap between Utah and the next round of Nitrocross, so it worked out pretty nicely. And after watching some of the Nitrocross action from Utah, we kind of need that time anyway to recover a bit. I think it was quite action packed.
Yeah, and we're coming off the back of an awesome interview with Blake Wilkie. It was really cool to have him on the show and do a driver episode. We had technical gremlins, and that's why it took so long for us to get that out. Just kind of like, the whole laptop dying thing, losing everything. It kind of happens, doesn't it?
It does, unfortunately, and I hope that we didn't curse him too much because then on his way to Utah, he had car troubles of his own, kind of breaking down and having technical issues of another kind. So I'm hoping we didn't pass that forward onto him there.
Oh, it could just be, coincidences, but you never know.
Let's go with
I
that.
think, yeah, absolutely. And I think both of us needed that little bit of a timeout before this exciting review episode because quite a bit happened. And we went
Yeah,
back to a round that we haven't done in a little while.
yeah, Utah, it's kind of where everything kicked off more or less back in the beginning of Nitrocross when it was at least Nitro Rallycross. So it was kind of, it's not really new to stuff, but it's just kind of, it was nice to go back to familiar-ish stomping ground back when Timmy and Kevin Hansen were still doing the racing, and it was like one round a year and they were just finding our feet with all of this kind of series and seeing if it could be something that could actually work. And now we're back because it's a world championship. So I'd say it's not gone too badly.
I would agree. I think they've definitely built on what they started in a really nice progressive way, and they're just throwing new things at it every time. I mean, we're going to touch on the Prix later on, but you're kind of just bringing so many random things, and they're making it so exciting and really can be edge of your seat stuff. Now, I know you are pretty happy about someone coming into this round. A
Yeah,
new driver,
it kind of
perhaps?
comes at your expense slightly because Chris Meek was not here for this round, but we did get Tanner Faust joining Excite Energy Racing instead. So yay at the same time. So I'm not too sad about it because Tanner obviously he was there at the beginning of Nitrocross. He's Tanner Faust. You kind of it doesn't really need an introduction. You all know what he's been there for. He's doing a bit of extreme E this year, so it kind of fits in with doing Nitrocross now. And it was just fun to see someone from the origins of Nitrocross come back and just really get in the mix of it. And in true Tanner Faust style, he was pretty much up to speed immediately and got in really in the thick of it.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome to see. Obviously, yeah, at my expense, I was hoping for bigger things from Chris Meek. Do I understand the decision by the team? Yes. Why not bring someone in that can potentially be fighting for the wins here? I mean, I don't
So
think that
fighting on
Chris
track, not off, considering
couldn't
what
do
we
it.
had last
Yeah,
time. So
absolutely. And it's not like I don't think Chris couldn't do it. I just think it's more they just need a change. They need to try and like throw some things out there before they get left by the wayside. So
they feel a bit like
it's
has to be in some
understandable.
regards. It's kind of like get your house in order and get the performance there first, and then you can choose which drivers to bring in that you would like more than the ones that are definitely going to get the results. Which is weird to say that of Chris Meek because he's Chris Meek as well, but you
Yeah,
get where I'm coming from.
absolutely. I definitely agree with you there. So I think understandable all around. However, sad because I did miss it.
Yeah, yeah, and we kind of all wanted to see maybe just not for the racing purposes what was going to happen off track as well with everything after last time, but we'll just have to wait on that one, unfortunately. But there was also one just a little bit of interesting news-ish, which I don't know if you got the chance to see it, but Kevin Eriksson had a new kicks delivery, and it was just damn fine to look at. It reminded me of Bumblebee, and just thought, yeah, Bumblebee's joined Nitrocross, and that's considering some of the carnage you get in both franchises, that seems like a perfect fit.
Absolutely. And do you know what? Sometimes you do wonder, these nitro cars are so crazy. Are they not Transformers? Like, it's
They're
possible.
doing the
If any
stunts for it,
car
aren't they?
could, yeah, if any car could potentially become a Transformer, I'd put my money on one of them because they just look mean and who knows? Obviously, it's highly unrealistic, but it would be cool.
All I'm saying is we want Hot Wheels cars of some of these liveries, and we want Michael Bay to listen to this podcast so that he can include some of Travis's stunt driving in the next Transformers film. Fit right in.
Absolutely. Do you know what would be fun? You know, there's like a massive stream of like racing movies and stuff now. Like you just had
Hmm.
Gran Turismo come through, and you've obviously got like I think there's talks of NASCAR doing a new series on Netflix. You've got Drive to
Okay.
Survive. All of these things are coming to the forefront. Like, why not have a racing movie about Nitro or like the origins of it? Because I feel like the story, even if you do it in a fictional dramatized way rather than like a documentary series,
I
there's
was going to
so
say it'd be
much that you
something
could
where
pick
if you
up
took
on.
it seriously, it would work really well, like you say. That, but even if it was Nitro Circus or Nitrocross doing it themselves, and they took a more tongue-in-cheek approach, that would still work really well as well. Which is like, what are these jokesters doing over there, having what looks like the best time? And you're like, oh, it's like that in person, pretty much as well. They've obviously maybe for the film purposes gone slightly jackass with it, but it works. And it's like, yeah, just come and have a fun time and look at all the awesome racing you get as a result of it and the chances that they give to younger drivers to get them throw them in the deep end and then they can walk off and maybe a bit more serious later on. But it's a great pool for so many different opportunities there. So you might be onto something, I reckon.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Travis has just released his series, the Black Rifle Coffee kind of series. They kind of came together and did a whole kind of YouTube series.
Mm.
And I think it could be something that would work really well for Nitro and just bring more to fans. Because, as you say, we have such massive gaps that it's not unrealistic to be able to throw together a couple of YouTube episodes in between, throw them out there, get people excited, get people kind of like feeling it more, and bring that buzz to each round continuously rather than a lull in the middle, if that makes sense.
I agree. And my last thing on that, before I get carried away too much, the idea is, and depending on the legality as well, of having a cannonball run between rounds and they see if they can get there. Because I was like, those films were good fun. And I feel like if you brought that, that was the kind of vibe that would fit Nitrocross perfectly. And I reckon a lot of those drivers would be up for that.
Absolutely. And on that intriguing note, shall we actually get to discussing what happened at the weekend and start with Friday?
Yeah, Friday. So Conor Mattel, top qualifier there. Very nice to see him have some good luck for a change. And granted, it was a bit mixed after that, but we take it where we can get it with Conor because he's a nice guy, he's a great driver, and he deserves it. So I'm glad that we got that side of things sorted for him at least.
Absolutely. And then in Heat 1, we had a little bit of a moment, hey, for Mr. Bennett.
I know it seems that we say this every weekend for him, unfortunately, but it is this is maybe not the best opening for him, but as we will get to, it does get better for him. So he did have a good opening Joker lap, which it's kind of he knows where he's at capability wise. I think in terms of he doesn't even try and take on the top three or the other three drivers necessarily in that race straight away because he knows he's maybe not up to par yet, but he's going to try an alternative strategy and see what he can do there. And it was a great Joker lap. Everyone was quite pleasantly surprised by it. But he did crash a bit into the tyres on lap one, then, and that did scupper his race. He did keep going though, so we've got to admire the tenacity for it.
Oh, absolutely. And then Ericsson seeming to have a pretty solid run, ending up P1, Guerra P2, Daly P3. I'm pretty happy with the first heat. Other than that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that was probably the most exciting part that happened with the heats. And then I think the second heat, pretty bog standard, you know.
Yeah,
Finished
business as
Fraz,
usual.
Larson, Pastrana, Faust. Like, let's be real. If you're not seeing Fraz in P1 in heats, like that's just not. It doesn't. Yeah, it's not how that works. Otherwise, semi-final one, Pastrana went straight into the final because
Yeah,
obviously he
again,
won that, which is awesome to see. It's been a while for him since he's had that kind of like solid run directly to the final.
and reassuring that he could do it on literally the one track where you're really hoping he could do it as well, considering he's pretty much built that from the ground up.
Absolutely. And then P2 for Guerra and Oliver Ericsson in P3. But I think
Yeah, he
he
had a bit of bad
crashed,
luck
right?
though, because he did crash on lap three, damaging his rear left tire slash wheel ish. So it was this intriguing kind of meld of damage there, which was a bit unfortunate. It didn't quite have Kevin's good luck there in his semi final, but it's racing. It happens sometimes. It wasn't too bad. I mean, it's again that's the great thing I think that we have with Nitrocross is that even if something does go wrong like this, you do have that opportunity later on in the last chance qualifier, which slight spoilers we move ahead. He did win his last chance qualifier, so doesn't have to be the end all, be all and end all that it would appear there. So that's a good say. I don't know if we've always had that with Nitrocross, but as you were saying near the start of this podcast, we do have that nice element with Nitrocross that they keep adapting and evolving and changing things to see what works and what doesn't. So it's nice that that element comes into it because you just don't have that with other motorsport series.
No, and you don't have continuous racing. Like you don't go from heats to semis to last chance qualifiers to finals. Like it's usually a very bog standard way, isn't it? You have your qualifying, you have your race, you have your top three. But they're always giving these drivers chances and kind of flipping the boards around continuously because you might not do great in your heat, but you might win your semi-final, or you might not do great in your semi-final, but win the last chance qualifier. And then that's all to play for in the final. You're kind of mixing people up that don't necessarily always end up in finals. I mean, good example of that is, I mean, Martel, he's had a little bit of I'd say up and downs over the last year and a half, like through the seasons, but awesome to see him make finals. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of gives those people who don't necessarily come straight out the bat, like your Frazzes and Larson's, it gives them that chance to kind of keep going and end up in the final themselves.
Yeah, and it means that even if you have that one bad result, you are not necessarily going to be feeling down about it straight away. You know that there's still all to play for in theory, and there is always that potential for an underdog narrative of, okay, it doesn't work all the time, but you've got the chance to make it happen, and sometimes you only need that one chance.
Yeah. I mean, going back to a last chance qualifier, Fraz didn't have a particularly good time in last chance qualifying too. He had a little bit of contact with a tyre and that sent him tumbling down the order. We don't really see that from him, mistakes like that.
No, it's very unfortunate. It was quite some height racing going on, if memory serves, and it was just a little bit too close and then into the tyre barrier, and you're like, yeah, that's not gone to plan at all there. But you have that groan of like, it was going so well, and then I mean, it's bad. That's the only unfortunate thing. If you do miss it up in the last chance qualify, you are a bit screwed then.
Kind of, yeah. And it's always interesting to see, like, you have your now, especially we're a year and a half in now. We're second season, 3 races in, 3 races, 2 races,
3 rounds in, yeah.
Yeah, 3 rounds in. The gaps do screw with my brain sometimes. I forget.
I get that.
But you are consistently always seeing Fraz in a final. It's very rare that guy makes a mistake. So it's kind of humbling in a way that he's still able to sometimes make mistakes.
It's a little bit like
Larson
last year. He was just kind of always there, and kind of he wasn't necessarily winning or on the podium, but he was always close to where it all was happening, and he'd at least get to the final and be there. So if that had ever really happened last year, I think it happened once to Larson last year. We were quite shocked with it. Whereas Fraz was like, okay, yeah, there are chinks in the armor, and it's obviously Fraz isn't going to be happy about it, but from a neutral perspective that we've got, we're kind of like, okay, that's good for overall, because at least it's not the same one or two people all the time.
Yeah. And I think what was really nice to see in the final was we finally, because I feel like it's been a little while, Pastrana, P1.
Yeah, it has been a little while because I'm trying to think. I know it happened towards the tail end of last season, or at least I'm thinking it did, but it feels like like you say, the gaps, there's always such big gaps between rounds anyway, never mind the season break, that it's just nice to see Pastrana P1. And again, if he was going to do it anywhere, it makes sense that it would be Utah, and you kind of think he was hoping that if he put somewhere around at the track that he built and he started Nitro, if he can't win that, come on, what are you doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And nice to see Kevin Eriksson, P2, and kind of like our regular human being that's in the top 3 at some point in time, backward. Like, let's be real. That's kind of a given. It's him and Fraz and Larson. Those are the consistent ones that you're finding in those top 3. But he unfortunately was involved in a lap 1 incident. Larson, sorry.
Yes, Larson.
Yes,
not backwards. Don't worry.
But Larson ended up P6. He was involved in a little incident in lap 1. But also good to see Martel round that out. And then unfortunately, after that incident, Oliver Eriksson kind of got a little interrupted.
Yeah, I mean, Martel being in that final there, and he and Eriksson, if I remember, did both DNF after a lap 1 incident. So it was kind of, what was I saying before? It's nice that we got Martel being the top qualifier, and then we should have really guessed that it was going too well for him with the. I don't know what voodoo god he's annoyed to get this kind of bad luck consistently, but we need to find out. We need to have some kind of a purge, I think, and just an exorcism of some kind to really help him out because I don't know what to do at this point. I don't know what to offer him as a way of some good luck. It doesn't seem to work whatever we try and manifest for him.
I know. I feel bad for him because he does so well and he gets himself to the points that he needs to be. And then I swear it is luck related. A lot of the times he's not making massive mistakes. I mean, mistakes are possible. Like this is Nitro. Like you can
Hmm.
drive into someone, incidents are going to happen. It's motorsport. But I don't understand why it's always him.
No,
It's a
it does seem a little
consistent
bit to be
thing.
the Neville
Yeah.
Longbottom of Nitrocross. Of why is it always me? We're like, we don't know. We're really sorry. It's you too. We'd like the bad luck to be shared around a little bit, just so it doesn't feel quite so on you all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that pretty much sums up a Friday for Group E. It was
Yeah, it was quite a good opening stint, and like you say, that was a whole round in a day. Like you say, it was continuous action throughout, and you had quite a bit of a mix in results. I mean, if I'm just looking back at just winners, you've got Kevin Eriksson, then Fraz, then Pastrana, then Larson, then a different Eriksson, then Backwood, and then Pastrana being the only actual repeat winner of the individual race throughout the day. And again, it's like if you have 7 races in a day and you've got 6 different winners, that's doing all right.
absolutely. And I think what's really cool is we are seeing massive changes in standing orders just because of everything being a little bit more mixed. We're seeing repeats, but we're not seeing too many that the points no one's running away with it. And again,
No.
that's the perfect thing about this championship is something can always happen and it somehow does. And we're left with this awesome continuation of constant changing. Like you cannot read it.
Mm. No, it's like you say, you know that probably Backwards, Larson, and Fraz are going to be in the mix there somewhere, but whereabouts near the top they're going to be, you don't know. They're just, and it's not necessarily all three of them, it's always just at least one of them. And the rest of it, who knows? You don't know. And again, with other drivers coming in and out, you never know because of these big gaps between rounds. We were expecting Meek to be there. Tanner Faust comes in, has what looks like a really fun time. I know that in the semi final two that he was in, he just looked like he was having a really he was just
Mm-hmm.
enjoying driving and life and whatnot. And whilst he wasn't able to like stay in P2 after a really nice move in that race,
Mm-hmm.
it still looked like it was like, yeah, that's just at the very least we've got good racing action here. And like you say, with the mixed results, and that's all you want for it. And with the races being as short as they are anyway, the fact that you're able to pack so much into 3 or 4 laps. I mean, I know when we watch some of the other categories, you're like, oh my god, 5 laps, that's a bit long. And you're just like, that's hang on a minute, what am I thinking?
Absolutely. I think you always think there's so much happening, but if you think about it, the grand scheme of things, it's not very many minutes. These
No, not at
races
all.
aren't very long. Like they're done within a blink of an eye, really, because they're just so fast. But leads us nicely on into next with Casper Janssen. I feel like that's a name we're reading all the time. He's
Yeah, pretty
constantly
much. It
winning
kind of
this.
goes the
Yeah.
opposite of the variety that we get. It's just and Casper Hansen
Yeah.
on in next. Next.
Yeah. And then also repeats of Vakala and Henderson. They're always the ones that you're kind of seeing. Leah was kind of throwing in a mix there in the first couple races. It just didn't seem to be her weekend. She didn't seem super
Yeah,
comfortable,
she was
wasn't,
up there, but and
yeah.
again, it's kind of it's unfortunate that the result did change after the race because it does mean that she got promoted to a P3, but we didn't get to see that, and it's always a bit annoying when it happens after a
Mm-hmm.
race anyway because you're like, well, I want to see it on track, and it was one of the silliest things I've seen someone get qualified for. Jansen, he did win on track, and so that's why we're saying, like, obviously it makes sense
Exactly.
that he would do that. And the technical infringement in question was his roll cage being 1 centimeter below regulation or something equally silly to that. And you think, okay, that's probably, I get why you've done that, but also, I don't know how much an advantage that gave him that he would
I
be running
really,
away. He'd probably be winning anyway.
yeah, I don't, yeah. Okay, maybe fractionally lighter, but again, as you said, he wins all the time. Also, a really random technical infringement when you've had two races before. So, what are you changing in your car in between? It
Yeah,
doesn't
I'm
quite
wondering maybe
add
if
up
that's
to
why he was
me.
disqualified rather than getting a time penalty, perhaps, and it's something that they
Yeah.
didn't notice up until that point in the day, and then realize, oh wait, was this? Boys, oh, we didn't check this earlier. Well, that's also on us, but we have to make it really on you now as well because you might have done this the whole day. And even though it's, again, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not a physicist, so I don't know what kind of advantage this could possibly give to be that advantageous. But rules are rules, I guess, and they do have to stick to them
Yeah.
occasionally in Nitrocross.
Yeah. I think you can't have a rule book and just throw it out the window. They try as much to
They
their
really do try.
ability. They really do try. But you do have to have some kind of like uniformity and regulation. And again, that's a safety reason at the end of the day. They believe the roll cage needs to be this certain thing. Like it's a safety thing. Don't change that. But it does
No.
surprise me that that happens in a race when you're 3 in. Like unless he's redone his whole car, that doesn't quite make sense, or it's been wrong the entire time and just not been picked up.
Yeah, yeah.
Which again brings a whole can of worms that we do not have time to open and discuss.
We'll move on to SXS, I think, because that was
I
also a
think
pretty
so.
standard procedure for the Friday action, at least. Kane and Baker won that outright. Tyler Reid in P2, both familiar names from the first round of the season because they were doing pretty well in there, I'm pretty sure. Amanda Sorensen P3, nice to see her doing well. We had quite a few, I think 3 different women in this race, in this category, which is the most we've had in a while, I think. So we had Gray Ledbetter in P4 and Letitia Buffoni P5. Nice to see her back as well. Sarone was P6 and McFarlane P7. And we had another block in Nitrocross this weekend because Mike Block was there. And okay, he DNF'd after crashing into Talladega Corner, but it was nice to see 2 blocks there. And that just, it makes sense that they're welcomed into this world again. Not that they weren't welcome before, but you know what I mean. It's nice that they're coming back and doing their thing. And again, the SXS, the buggies, they're always good fun. So why not have them in there? And Leah was there last year, so there's obviously room for progression. Maybe we get her in Group E next year, and we get Mike in the next category. Who knows?
Absolutely. And I love that the whole family's involved in motorsport. Mum's rallying, Leah hops between rallying, now Extreme E and Nitro. Like they're all really, really invested in motorsport. And I love to see that even with the sad news that we obviously got earlier this year of Ken passing away, they've not let their love of that sport die out. And sometimes it's easier to just let it go. It really is. Like there's a lot of like memories involved. So really good to see they're all still there. They're also having a blast and living up his name as best they can.
And I think the other interesting thing there is the fact you're saying about Leah going to Extreme E. Just the amount of drivers between Extreme E and Nitrocross now is silly. I mean, you've got Tanner, you've got Leah, you've got Amanda, you've had Backward be a reserve driver, you've got Fraz obviously now in X44, you've got, I can't remember who else. There was one other driver who was also a reserve driver briefly. Thiemo Scheider's been back and forth between the two this year and last year. So it's like, Michaela, obviously, we've had her. Johan came in last year. I'm like, right, are we just, at what point are we doing a joint event? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Nitrocross on ice in Greenland, anyone? Or going against the Extreme E cars? I'm just going to float that out there and we see what happens.
That would be fun. And what's really cool is now there's definitely a segue, Sebastian Loeb.
Hint, hint.
Has to happen at some point. If it doesn't, I'm going to be severely disappointed because could you imagine?
Transfer your Chris Meek eggs into this basket instead and see how long it takes for that one to happen, right?
Come on, Nitro. Go make him an offer he can't refuse. Get him in a car. It will be so much fun to watch. And you know what? There's a possibility he might not excel at it. Who knows?
Maybe that's why he doesn't want to do it. Maybe we've got to call him Chicken. I don't know if I want to call Sebastian Loeb Chicken on the podcast or putting out in public, but if that's what it takes, I'll have to do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But he has to he's the most well-rounded driver there is. He's done everything under the sun. Like, let's see it at some point.
Yeah,
so that's Nitro. That's what we want. We want Loeb in a car.
Baja Bugs, that's a smoother segue I can get in there. We had a final, wasn't broadcast live, but we may have had some good luck here because Blake Wilkie, after all the calamity and getting there, he did win and he came from the back of the grid to win, which seems like a familiar story of his now from what we've learned after talking to him. So nice to see that he's at least, doesn't matter what happens before or after a race, he can come and perform and he wins anyway.
Absolutely. And it is sad that these are kind of like getting cut off by the end because there's so much going on. They can't televise everything. And
Oh
with
no,
everything
put it
that's
on
happening in
YouTube.
the other rounds, yeah, I think that's what we're missing now, right? The little stuff that they throw out on YouTube here and there. It'd be nice to kind of like see snippets and highlights of those races, but awesome
I
to
say,
see
like you
him
say, the races
win.
are short anyway, so even if you don't put the full thing on there that's about 4 minutes long anyway, you just put doing very mini highlights. It's easy enough to do.
Yeah, I definitely think there's so much more content that can be created through some of the stuff. And we have rounds, space between rounds, Nitro. Like, let's see it.
Let's
We
utilize
always
it.
it's
Let's utilize it.
fun. Yeah, absolutely.
Moving on to Saturday, then it was a different top qualifier. We had Kevin Eriksson this time, so that was fun, but also not too unexpected either. Eriksson's doing what Eriksson's do best, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think what's funny again is we mentioned Friday, like Fraz was just not having the best luck in the world for him. And he went off the track. And do you want to explain a little bit more on that? Because it just
Yeah,
surprises
it
me
kind of his bad
like
luck
these
from Friday just
mistakes.
continued into Saturday, and normally you see a reset and be like, okay, that's because again these are two separate rounds. If we're looking at it as bluntly as possible, there, so you think, okay, that's done. Rearview mirror, it's yesterday's business. Da 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 da. Now we've got to focus on round three. And instead, he went off the track after a matter of corners because he hooked a tyre over the edge of the track by himself just before the end on the final lap. And it was kind of this corner because it was just, I think, two corners after where he'd crashed into the tyre barriers the previous day. So it wasn't even that
Mm-hmm.
far off. So it was a bit odd there. And he kind of had for a heat, quite a bit of chaos. I mean, Guerra's pretty new. He won that because Fraz was leading up to that point, and Guerra's kind of hunting him down. And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird to say the pressure got to Fraz because we don't generally see that happen. Bennett then got P2, which he did in excellent style, I might add. Because guess what came back? The bonnet pretty much folding back onto the windscreen, as we saw with Martel and a few other people in last season. So he couldn't see a damn thing. And it just always amazes me how they still just keep their foot in. And like, I know you can maybe see a little bit between the bottom of the windscreen and there's that slight gap, but enough to be
Mm-hmm.
doing all of this with the amount of crap flying at you. I mean, you're the rally driver between the two of us. Are you likely to have been doing that as well?
I've seen it happen. It's never happened to me where the bonnets come back on me. I've had pieces of bodywork flying off, but I have seen a
Would you
guy
be as
called
calm about it?
Furasef. Probably not, but I've seen it happen. Like I don't know how they do it, and I don't know how they foot kicked in. And maybe I lie. It's never happened to me, but you're in such high adrenaline and you know what you need to do that you probably just deal with it. And you look between the gap, or you've got your pace notes, you get your co-driver to do it. They don't quite have the same thing. However, they go around the track enough, they must memorize it. So it probably is actually not as bad as it seems. But it
So
seems that
not as bad
Fraz
as it seems,
just
but also he did drive into the side of Fraz whilst Fraz was trying to get back onto the track. So kind of
yeah,
like, on the one hand,
that's
you can forgive him for that because he probably wasn't expecting Fraz to be there, but it is kind of
yeah.
funny that it's like, yeah, you that I'm surprised this hasn't happened sooner with other people with the same issue before because they've just been flying along as if it's the most normal thing in the world, and finally, what
Mm-hmm.
you expect to happen.
Exactly. And that kind of puts Pastrana, he also had early contact in that with
With
Mr.
Fraz as well.
Fraz. I
Just a
just
bad
don't
day for Fraz.
understand. Like, yeah, all around. Like, maybe that's what made him lose his thoughts and go off the track. I don't know. It's just something we don't see and very surprising.
No, it was, let's say, dramatic start to proceedings, but it's also weirdly classic Nitro. I'm like, oh dear, if this is how we're starting for the day, what are we letting ourselves in for the rest of it? And as it turned out, a little
Exactly.
bit of a quieter morning slash afternoon in comparison. Not that it wasn't good racing, but the heats in the semi-finals and more or less the last chance qualifiers, pretty smooth business as usual for Nitro. Just decent racing, but nothing major, which is just
No,
probably like
nice. Exactly. And I think nice to see, Bennett doing well, P2 in a semi-final, the first semi-final. Awesome to see the progression now. Now we keep saying there was progression there. I just think that luck and there was not an all-round approach and finish for him last year / the beginning of this year. It was always like you get there and then something happens and you get knocked out. But really cool after the issue of the windscreen and everything to see him come P2 in a semi-final. Like, this is what we like to see. We like to see these people progress and make it into the final, because that's good. It's good racing.
It's and again highlights the benefit of the last chance qualifier, because even doing all right in his semi-final, P2 is not something you normally shake at. It still meant he had to go to a last chance qualifier, but again, P2 was enough to get him through. And okay, maybe Daly having to do a double joker because he jump started didn't help. But again, you've got to be there to capitalize on the opportunities and the mistakes that others make when it happens, and just be glad that the bad luck's not happening to you for a change. And again, gets him to the final, and the final was pretty good on the whole. And P5 for Bennett, we would have probably taken that and run with it last season. So, like you say, progress. It's kind of, you see P5 and you're just kind of a casual fan and think, nah, fine. I'm like, no, pretty good, because we've come a long way to get here, and you can't just measure it on what you read on the results. There is a story there.
Exactly. And with how many rounds they go through and things that can happen, mistakes that can be made, penalties, anything, it's actually kind of hard to get yourself into a final, because
even if
so
you do
much
everything
going
right,
on.
you can just be taken out by someone. Who knows?
Exactly. And I think that's what's awesome about it is Fraz had such, let's be real, for him, horrendous, I think is a good word for his Saturday leading up until that, because it's just so uncommon. But nice to see he pulled himself together, and all right, it's out of the podium, but P4 is a pretty solid end up for
he
where
had to
he
get
was
there.
at.
He managed to win his last chance qualifier that he was in, which again, like, okay, finally he got his head straight. And okay, yeah, P4, but with how close these races are anyway, P4, if you'd offered to him that at the beginning of the day after that tumultuous start, you'd probably go, you know what, if I have to, I'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's really funny is this whole weekend kind of highlighted how tricky things can be and how consistency doesn't always pay off, because someone like Oliver Eriksson didn't finish the final. And he's someone you're usually inclined to see. He's giving that podium. He's usually skating by pretty easy. And same with Baccarat, like, who doesn't do the
So you were saying
Joker?
about making mistakes there. This was a pretty big one, and it was confusing Coley and Jared in commentary as well, because we're all sitting there wondering the same thing of like, take your Joker. Okay, he's not okay. Next lap, you got to take your Joker, and the final, you have to take it now, and he doesn't, and you're like, he does know it's the last lap, right? Because even normal circumstances, normal-ish, I suppose, you'd think, okay, he's just had a very rare human error moment. He's just forgotten. But then you realise that they've all got spotters. And you're like, well, why are they not telling him that he needs to be on a Joker? Who's dropped the ball there? Or was there a radio issue? What happened? And I'm not 100% sure. If and when we get the chance to have a chat with him, maybe we can just ask him there and be like, so what the heck happened there? But it's again, it's the kind of mistake that you have with Fraz and earlier in the weekend. It's not something you see that often, and this is one of those big names that we were saying about earlier. They're always there somewhere, and he's just now screwed as a result of that. I mean, you get disqualified if you don't do your Joker. That's just how that works. Yeah. So big potential loss of points there for him. And if he comes P2 in the championship, now I know we've got a long way to go, but if that's the reason he doesn't win overall, oof, that's going to smart.
Oh, 100%. But what's really funny is like everything seemed to be, I don't know, these last few rounds has been a little bit weird. Like Larson's not been as consistent, but now he's back. He's P1 in this final, finally wins one. But it's just, we're going to go through the points in a little while, but my mind is not wrapping around some of it, because it's just not what you expect. Like Kevin Eriksson by the end of last season on podium, same with his brother. So it's just, I don't know. It's definitely heating up to be a really good season. And I genuinely think someone we didn't even expect might win this championship by the end of the year, just based on how much more dramatic this season has started to become.
Yeah, I'm not going to be a betting man just yet and put any money down on that one, because it doesn't seem a wise move in any stretch of imagination. But it is just, again, it's interesting, like you say, though, you've got such a mix of characters in there that we don't know how long Tanner's coming back for, because these, like we say, such big gaps between rounds. We just assume we're getting you for the one at least if you're coming in, and we just got to hope that you come back. But the fact that he can come P3 on his return to Nitrocross just speaks volumes about the driver capability he is. And if he stays for the rest of the season, maybe I just put a little bit of money on him just as an outside chance and just see what happens there. Because if that's what you're doing after however many years out of it, who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I think Nitro takes the cake for me on some like of one of my favorite motorsports solely because you cannot predict.
Yeah.
It's quite impossible, for lack of better words. Like it really is. You look at it and you're like, oh, I
Again,
have my
take
favorites.
first, for
I'm
example, you count them out
expecting
immediately,
exactly.
and then P4, and you're like, well, I don't know anymore. I don't, and we watch this. We're more or less more dedicated than many of the casual fans are, and they're like, well, we don't know either. We've all got the same chance of getting this right.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so much fun is you expect something, like you expect your Larsens. You see Baccarat in the top three consistently. Now all of a sudden he's forgetting his Joker lap. Like again, not gonna wrap my head around that anytime soon because that just seems very strange. But it's always changing. And I think it's incredible that you can have top level sport like this. I think it would be the perfect kind of like world championship. And I know that's not what they're going for. You have the FIA world championship. They don't want that. They want to be the fun, relaxed, cool,
Mm.
have the opportunities to kind of throw regulations out the windows half the time. Obviously, not safety, that's important. But you know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
kind of like,
they
it's
kind of want to
wild.
take it as far as the FIA without being the FIA, so that they can have that important bit of freedom to still do whatever the hell they want with it. And I think you do need a championship like that, but with it's again, it's trying to make it so that it's even if you can't necessarily say get super license points just for the sake of all like something that can contribute
Mm-hmm.
to you getting into another championship, at least you can get this really valuable experience from all matter of drivers that are coming into this,
Yeah.
and that's just it's kind of like doing work experience without getting paid, but but you actually don't mind for a change.
Yeah. And you know what? How fun would it be if F1 was like this sometimes, where you literally couldn't predict who was going to be on the podium? Wouldn't that make it far more exciting? Like,
Don't depress me.
that's the, I
I
know, I'm
want that so
sorry.
badly.
I know. But that's what I love about this sport is you can get anything. And
Pretty much.
every single time we have a chat, there's something that surprised me.
I was going to
And
say that
it's
is a
crazy that it's like that.
it's a smoother segue. I'm going to jump ahead slightly because that's a perfect segue to you literally can't predict what's going to happen because you have Group E, some excellent technology in cars going insanely fast with some of the top drivers. And then on the same ticket for a weekend, you have the Van Prix, which is just. I mean, the commentary for this alone was perfect because you've got. I can't remember who it was coming in to talk with Jared for the commentary to do it, but asking, are there any special entry requirements for this category to enter? Slight pause, and then Jared just, really none. Just no, just nothing really. And honestly, I watched it. I couldn't tell you who won, and I did watch it closely, but it was just I was just in stitches the whole time because I only know that Coley finished P10 and a van painted like a cow DNF'd, and that a van painted like a school bus did win, but I don't know who's in that. And the reason that Coley finished in P10 was because he was stuck in first gear for the entire race. You had 4 laps of that course in these vans. And if you thought the Bartha bugs were slow, they look like F1 cars in comparison to this. And it was under the lights. You had Coley racing one of the drone cameras at one point. He crashed into one of them. Another one came in the van, I think. And he had Jamaican flags and Union Jack sticking off the back of the van. And I mean, that's already not going to help him go any quicker. But and I'm going to have to put the microphones down slightly. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, it's unfortunate, but just go and watch the replay of it. You kind of had Coley driving along, and then you get to one of the jumps and be like, dun, 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 and then just dun 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 dun, just massively shaking the whole thing, and you're like, how are those not breaking in half every time they go over something? And they were like, I'm not even sure how many cars there were, like 12 or 13 of them, but it was just insane seeing them all try and fit around some of these tight corners, and I'm amazed that we didn't get more carnage out of it. But what a fun thing to have alongside this kind of groupy serious. That looks so serious by comparison because you've got people carriers
Mm-hmm.
going around the place, and you're like, I don't know what's going on anymore.
Absolutely. And I think that's what there's always something to love about Nitro. And it is the
That's
fact
what
that
makes
they
Nitro
do
Nitro.
love comedic value out of this too. Like, who would have thought? Who went and sat there and goes, let's do a van race? That's what's
And
gonna. I know they touched on
and
it
not
at
just
the end
any
of our
van race.
series.
Anyone can be in this. We're not going to
Yes,
necessarily have drivers for this. I mean, totally coming over the line, P10, pretty much climbing half out the car so he can celebrate like he won the race, as if he's recreating that meme of the guy that's happy to be in third, while first and second are looking at him like, "What are you doing?" And the car's just still trundling along because, let's face it, nothing bad's going to happen if he's in first gear.
absolutely. And I think we have to get a little snippet of what he felt doing that and how it felt, because I just think that's going to be fun. So yeah, we'll try and get you his feedback and thoughts on what he thought of
I'm
that
going to
Van
predict he says
Prix.
it was the proudest moment of his life. Let's go. Let's say he's
Mm-hmm.
going to say that.
Yeah.
But
But then kind of like all of that excitement left us with next. And I'm not saying it's not exciting, but let's be real, it's not as exciting as that, because as usual,
it's
you
a
have
hard bill to top.
Henderson and Janssen in P1 and P2. They kind of like are consistently in those top three. And hopefully he fixed his roll cage issue and didn't have, obviously wasn't
Yeah,
disqualified that
as
day.
far as I was aware, he didn't get to qualify for that. I mean, what a hell of a thing it would have been to have that happen 2 days in a row for the same reason if it did. Yeah, you boy Grusker in P3, so that was nice to see something different there.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially him taking Blaine Vacala's spot as he DNF'd, so it was a bit unfortunate, but everything else is business as usual there. And I think that's, you know, we're not saying a lot about it, but that's just because sometimes you just have a solid race and there's just not much to report on it. It was just, we
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it. It was fun. It obviously wasn't the Van Prix, but you're glad it wasn't the Van Prix because you need that balance. You need that balance.
100%. And then these buggies, always fun. Mr. Pastrana loves to, get out and about a little bit. So threw himself back in there because he obviously was like, I just need some fun this weekend. I didn't get to do the Van Prix, so I'm going to get back in my SXS.
We're going to have to do some social media sort of thing where you find all the outtakes of you saying that, which put together until you finally get it the first time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Anyway,
yeah,
the
Pastani came P2, so
SX.
that was so he saved himself. He got on the podium again, second time at his home race, shall we say? So it was nice to see it, and it was pretty much business as usual for the most part
Mm,
until it wasn't, because it kind of just it was mad. I mean, the fact that again, one of the things we've come across in our time doing this podcast so far is that there's a lot of drivers that we may not have come across before, and
mm.
I just love the fact that we have a driver in this category called Cowboy Cerrone, and I don't even know what to. I want to know more about this person. He DNF'd after, well, kind of DNF'd after rolling on the last lap, and his right rear came off, and that kind of triggered a bit of a domino effect. I mean, he was up to P3 up to that point, and but then it's kind of as soon as that happened, all these other kind of chaotic things happened there. Sisha Buffoni, she was in P8 because she somehow did her skateboarding thing but in a car and mounted a tire wall and got stuck half balanced on it on the final lap. You had a DNF from Kanan Baker early on, which kind of I think he just got out of the way early so that he could avoid all this chaos. But again, interesting that he won the race the day before. DNFs. Rem Reed gets P1. So there's an interesting title battle potentially there. And then we had a completely different person in P3, but also it was Sorensen, but not Amanda. It
I
was
know.
Brandon. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
where did you come
It's
from?
like, I know. We had morphing twice. We had Amanda into Brandon
Mm-hmm.
and Mike into Kira.
Yeah,
Please tell
yeah.
me I
So
got
it's
his
like
name right, because I
you
was
did.
like sitting there
I could
going,
see you
I'm
thinking
not
about that.
recalling this. Sorry. But yeah,
No, that was
strange.
again nice to see. I knew there was another one somewhere. I didn't realize that they'd swapped around, and I just remembered there. But yeah, it was kind of yeah. That kind of sums it up. It was kind of like we swapped out two drivers, but they're keeping us going. Ray Ledbetter still P4. Like I'm just going to do my thing and try and get rid of all this chaos
Mm-hmm.
going on around me and just take the advantage of it. So yeah, it's a bit of a nuts way to finish off that category, but also that is pretty much what we know that category for. So that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. I think that leads us perfectly into our drivers of the weekend. And I'm going to throw in a new one here. Not
Okay.
disappointments, but surprises of the weekend.
Okay, I thought you were going to just say disappointment of the weekend, and then who was your disappointment of the weekend? Like, okay, we're really going
No,
straight away there.
no. I would never say who disappointed me in a weekend.
Oh,
Usually it's Chris Meek because I
she's
expect
not
far
mad, she's
higher,
just
but I didn't
disappointed.
have to worry about that. There's a difference. But I would say my surprise for the weekend in a not so amazing way, because obviously the surprise of the weekend was how fun that Van Prix was. But my surprise for the weekend was Fraz. Just
Yeah,
completely, it's just there was no words to
just
sum it
wasn't
up
there.
because it's just wasn't normal. There was just no expectation. Like usually I'm sat here going, Fraz was my driver of the weekend. That's who it was because great consistency, this, that, the other. It's the first time I've ever been able to say I'm confused. I'm not
Yeah, it's
understanding.
kind of
So
normally. I mean, it's kind of good that Blackwood didn't do his Joker because it kind of
mm-hmm.
distracts you from Fraz for a little bit. As oh,
Yeah,
it's not just the one driver doing something, but yeah, it's kind of surprised, but in a I'm not sure what to do with this information kind of way, and I hope it's just this random one-off blip. So
yeah.
yeah, that's fair enough. I think trying to think who I think in a slightly more positive, surprising way, I'll go for Bennett just because it was nice
Mm-hmm.
to see him slowly but surely getting his way up there. Because I think everyone else in Group E at least, and to be fair, the Baja Bugs next definitely, and the SXS, everything more or less happened roughly as we'd expected to. It was the same kind of
Mm-hmm.
people. There was a good racing. There was a good bit of drama as always, but more or less business as usual with
Yeah.
the nice, but with the nice little twists of spice here and there. But it was nice to see Bennett being a bit of a new twist on that narrative and coming in there. And I hope that it can keep going for the next round.
Me too. I definitely really hope that that happens. And it would be cool to see Tanafel stay in that position, but I'm obviously not going to be sad if Meat comes back. And by the way, there's no disrespect here to Fraz. Like 100%. I still think he's an absolutely
Oh
fantastic
yeah, it's
driver.
just more of a
And it's
concerning
literally
surprise. That
just,
was all.
yeah, I'm concerned because this is not normal for him. So, and let's be real, if you asked me who I thought had high hopes of winning the championship this year over Larson, that was my pick.
I mean, that's
So
not to
that's
say it's
why
all
I no
done. It's just
longer.
not going to help him.
No. Not at all. Because when we go through these standings, they're wild right now because they don't make sense. Again, Nitro, we need an explanation of this point system because I don't understand how these points are allocated.
Every
But
time I
I'll
look at them,
do
I lose sleep.
my driver of the weekend. It's really hard because I don't think anyone consistently threw themselves out there for me. So I'm going to pick Larson just because it's nice to see him win again.
Fair enough. I mean, I can't really disagree with you there. It's just nice to see him up there, and we just love to see it. I mean, for me, it's a lot easier because there's only one choice, and it's got to be Coley for his outstanding performance in the Van Prix. I mean, you can't come P10, be that happy about it, and just be an absolute legend in the process of it without getting some kind of kudos from me for that. So we need more van racing. We need more Coley in there, and I think next time I don't know quite how the health and safety will work on this, but during the commentary for the Baja Bugs, he did offer 6 people spaces in his van for that race. No one took him up on that offer. I would like to know why. And if it's a health and safety thing, fair enough. But if it's not, can we make that happen, please?
Yeah. I hope it comes back, this Van Prix. Like, I hope this is a regular segment. Make this into a random
You know,
championship part of
you know what
this.
I want. If it's going to be in that same van and it's going to be in so stuck in first gear around whatever track it's going around, a very Nitro circusy thing to do would be a homage to that Top Gear episode where they see how comfortable that Range Rover is and give someone a tattoo in the back. That's all. That's going to be my
Yes.
suggestion. Let's just again, we've noticed things manifest themselves into Nitrocross over the past year once we've mentioned them. So let's see which one of these things we've suggested today comes into it. If it's that one, I apologize in advance to whoever's getting up with that tattoo.
I agree. That's genius. I like that. But also, if this thing stays, Nitro, I want to go.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. As I'll be the person watching and laughing in the van, but I'm not getting the tattoo because I'm not that stupid.
No, I want to drive it.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that could work. That could work.
I don't want a tattoo. I don't want a tattoo. Absolutely not. I'm not volunteering for that. Let's volunteer Street
Just
Bike
getting that
Tommy for
on the
that.
record. Yeah, I had a bad feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah. I'm volunteering Street Bike Tommy for the tattoo in the back of the van. with Andrew Coley driving.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to find a tattoo artist. Maybe one of the
They had a
drivers wants to
couple at
volunteer.
Lyddon Hill, so maybe one or two of them, we'll fly them out, get that sorted. I'll just be emotional support for everyone and just be laughing the whole way through. There we go.
But I
Sorted.
actually want to go in the Van Prix. Like, Nitro, if this is like, you
Yeah,
can
if the
be
tattoo's
whatever,
going too well,
whoever.
you'll ram the van we're in. Like, right, let's make this interesting.
Yeah, just want to go. But
Ugh.
this brings us finally to the championship standings that basically, let's be real, are the bane of our existence sometimes because they
They
don't
really
make
are.
any sense.
I mean, it's yeah. I mean, if let's yeah, Kevin Eriksson is leading the way with 205 points. I just got to read them out because let's just not focus on it too much because I don't know how it works yet. Robin Larson, P2, 174 points. Backroad in P3, 171. Then fourth, but on equal points to fifth, but count back, I'm guessing, is why Fraser McConnell is in fourth with 147, with Travis in P5 also on 147. And then at the bottom of the page at the moment is Chris Meek, but granted, he only had one round. But despite being in P12 and not having the best time of it in the first round of the season, he does have 44 points, which is why, like you say, it's just the bane of our existence. I don't get how you can have such a unfortunate weekend and still come away with what in other categories would be a hell of a lot of points. I mean, can you imagine if you were in that position in Formula One and you still got 44 points for
Yeah,
doing bugger all? You'd
exactly.
be happy as Larry.
100%. But also, we were talking about this beforehand. How do you go up almost 100 points? Obviously, not exactly, but Kevin
But yeah,
Eriksson
Kevin
was what in
Eriksson,
100 and somethings and then ended up
127 odd
205.
points after Friday, and then after Saturday's 205. And yeah, no, I got questions. I got questions.
Yeah, Nitro, we need some answers. So this might have to be an entire episode. We might have to have someone from Nitro come on the show and we're
I,
literally going to question them about how these point system
I
works.
think not long after we finish recording here, I'm gonna find that Sheldon Cooper meme of "I need answers" and post that on our podcast and tag them, and be like, maybe this will wake you up because I need answers. I do genuinely need them.
Exactly. And I think on that note, I believe that is all we have time for this week.
Yes,
After
perfect.
what was a pretty entertaining weekend, if I do say so. Like, we don't usually have so many dramatics in Group E. It's usually pretty
Mm-hmm.
smooth sailing. A couple of
You
accidents
say you
here and
expect
there,
this
you
from
know,
the
you've
lower
got a roll
categories,
throw
to be
in
honest,
there,
don't you?
yeah.
So, but
But pretty entertaining weekend all around. And
last
if
thing
you
I
don't
will say is
already,
actually that
yes,
is that they mentioned it in commentary, but also just from you were saying as well earlier about this a little bit as well. The gap jumps and some of the visuals for that and the way it's being filmed, it did look superb as well. And just that some of them coming through the Joker lap that went underneath the gap jump and them jumping at the same time. Ooh, I mean, if someone's asking you why do you watch Nitrocross, and you're thinking of all the drama, you're thinking of the van racing, you're thinking of just the kind of domination in the next category and saying you've got a bit of everything, just show them those kind of clips and go, that right there.
mm-hmm, absolutely. But if you don't already follow us on social media, please go give us some love over there on the Nitro RX podcast page. And we'll be back in hopefully a few weeks. Don't hold us to this, but I'm sure we will have some more driver interviews for you soon before this massive gap till the next round.